Hey everybody, welcome to Wagered on Tilt. I am T, and today we're going to cover a very important piece of data modeling called backtesting. What backtesting is that I'm going to use historical information to try and predict other games and events that I already know the outcomes for, and I'm going to try and see how good is my data model. Is it really actually calculating out what we think is going to be a winner, or does it just give bad results? And then if I keep getting bad results, then I probably need to go ahead and rebuild my model and think about the numbers I'm using differently. As always, if you like the content that I am providing, go ahead and give this video a like. That way I know that this is useful information and it is helping you, and I should continue to create content around these things. If you do want to get notified as soon as my next piece of content is online, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, and then that way you'll be notified immediately once a new video is up. One of the keys to doing a backtest though is do not use in-game stats for the games that you're evaluating. So what that would mean is if I want to look at the year of 2020 to 2021 and test against those games, I would want to actually use stats from 2019 through 2020. Because if I'm using stats that are in the same season as those games were played, well, of course they're going to be predictive of those games because we already have the knowledge of what the outcome of the game was, so we already have a direct relationship between those two. What we want to see is, are these stats in the way that they're built into the model predictive for future events? You can't do that with in-season stats. So what you want to do is go ahead and use historical information, run your model against it, and then see how you did. So we're going to go ahead and dive in on how to write a macro for this. It's pretty simple, not overly complicated. I will have down below a link to the media file that you can download for a text file with these macros in there. So if you write your model exactly how I have here, you'll go ahead and be able to use that immediately. Thanks, and let's get to it. All right, so what we're looking at right now is a backtest tool that we're going to continue to build. I went ahead and took the soccer model that I built, and I have a video on, and I exported it out of Google Sheet and put it into Microsoft Excel. So from here, we're going to want to create a macro. The first thing, though, that we need to do is collect the correct data. So what I did was I went ahead and collected data from the 2019 to 2020 season. To do this, I went ahead and used the web scraper. That's why you can see all of the color coding on the table. And I went ahead and collected all the information and made sure it lined up in the correct columns. That way I can see the actual scores, the away team, the home team. I then went ahead and also added this information into the away stats and home stats. That way it actually populates correctly into the average stats. And I can still use the pickers over here on this sheet, which is the dashboard. Again, this way I can just use the model that I already have and I don't have to reset everything. And then I just did one last export again of the 2020 to 2021 season. The reason I'm going to look at the 2020 to 2021 season is because my stats are from the year before. So if we want to get a good gauge on how well can this predict, I don't want to use the same stats as the season that I'm actually comparing against. I want to say in 2019, let's use those stats to see how well it would have predicted the 2020 season. And then that way we can kind of get a good gauge. So that's why you always want to use data from a previous year versus the data that's in the year that you're running your tests against, because then the model's already been informed on what that data is, and it's going to give you a false narrative for your model and your testing. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and go into Developer, Visual Basic, and we're going to go ahead and open up this. And if you right click here, scroll down to Insert, select Module, you're all set. So the first thing we're going to want to do is create a subroutine to go ahead and figure out what the score of our prediction would have been, right? So the first thing we need to evaluate is what would the away have scored, the home, who would have been the winner, the over, the under. I'm not going to do the spread right now because I didn't think through how to set that up on this. You can always do the spread by copying the same kind of logic. So we're going to go ahead and type in sub predict score. So that'll be our subroutine. And then as always, I like to turn off screen updating. So application dot screen updating equals false. So now when this macro runs, Microsoft Excel will not constantly be updating the screen and slowing down the computer. Then at the end, right before it says end sub, you're going to type application.screen updating equals true. So you're going to say, turn off the screen refresh, run all of my calculations and logic, and then turn back on the screen so that I can go ahead and see the data. So the next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and set up some variables so that I don't constantly have to rewrite some of the VBA. So I'm going to say dim, and then we'll say backtest as worksheet, and we'll say set backtest equal to worksheets, parenthesis, quote, backtest. Then we need to do dim dash as worksheet, set dash equal to worksheets dashboard. And what this will do is, again, that way I don't have to write this long string of worksheets, parenthesis, quote, the sheet name. Now I can just call it by its variable names. So then we're going to want to go ahead and set up our base loop. So we want to know how many games are we going to loop through. We'll just go ahead and check here. So there's record 306, and we're starting on row 2. So we're going to say for x equals 2 to 306. Create some space in there, and next. I always like to write my for and next just to get that way I don't forget to write it, and then it's going to cause problems later. We have that, so now we need to go ahead and set up some more variables. So I'm going to say away team equals backtest dot range. So we're going to tell what column it's in, F and X. So what I'm saying is you're going to look at this column F, and every time it loops through, the row will change. So dot value 2. Then we need our home team, and it'll be the same thing, equals backtest dot range. Now we're going to point to column C because that's where that team is at, dot value 2. So now when this loop runs, it's going to collect, all right, this first game that we're going to try and run our prediction on, let's set up the home team and the away team, and we'll pull it from the sheet. Now that we have that, what we will say is dash dot range of A2, I believe, value 2 equals away team. So what we're going to do is we're going to store this as a variable, and then it's going to come into the dashboard while it's running, and then it's going to put that away team here, and then it'll put the home team here. So let's go ahead and grab that back up. All right, so then we'll also set up dash dot range A3 dot value 2 equals home team. And again, every time it loops through the games, it's going to grab a new one. So you can also put in comments so that you know what you're doing. So I'm going to put a little tick and then just say select the teams, tick, set the teams. All right, so then what we'll say is we need to now capture, when it passes this information into the screen, we need to capture what the score, the chance to win, over, under, and things like that. So we're going to say predicted score. Okay, so then we're going to say, right now we're just going to on the fly create a variable. This isn't the best way to write code, right? You'll usually want to declare all your variables up front, but it's easy to do it this way in VBA, and it makes more sense when you're trying to teach somebody. So what we'll do is just create one on the fly, and then we will say away score equals dash dot range B2 dot value 2, and then home score equals dash dot range B3 dot value 2. And I know I misspelled this over here, so let's fix that before we move on. There we go. Now we have the right one. All right, so now we're going to capture those scores. Then we want to go ahead and grab the chance to win. So we're going to say predicted chance to win. And we'll say away chance equals dash dot range C2 dot value 2. Home chance equals dash dot range C3 value 2. So we're going to continue doing this. We're going to keep cranking on through these. So now we want to get predictions for under and overs. All right, so here we have two over and unders, right? We have this model and then this model, and they're slightly different. So we want to account for both. So that is going to be D7 and D8. So what we'll say is O/U model. We'll say OU1 for the first model equals, so we'll say over, so now we'll just say over 1, right? So for the over for the first one equals dash dot range D8 dot value 2. And if we look here, we got that. Oh, so it would be 7, and then the next one will be 8. All right, so we can do it this way. 2, delete is 8. Now if we copy this, paste this, and we'll just change this second set of these to under, and then we need to just change these to E, because E is the next column over. So if we look at this, we are now capturing these values here, right? We got this one and this one, and then this one and this one. Now we need to add in some of our logic to decide what the score we predict would have been. So we're going to create an if statement. So decide if over or under. And I'm going to go ahead and move this up so we can see it. Create some more padding in here so I can move this on up. All right. So we're going to type in here, if over 1 is greater than under 1, then, and I always indent, then OU selection equals over. So we put that in quotes, so we're going to say our model from this first Monte Carlo is saying it's going to go over, else OU selection equals under. And again, we went ahead and created another on-the-fly variable. Just make sure you're not duplicating variables when you're doing it this way. That's why usually you want to declare everything up front so that you don't duplicate things. But again, for this, it's simple. It's not crazy coding, so don't worry about it. And at the end, again, you end your end if. So end if. So that one is going to go ahead and set the first variable for our model. And we're going to just copy and paste it and then mark this with a 2. And then we'll change out our variables here to match the 2. So under and over 2, 2, and we can put 2, 2. So now it's going to set another variable, boom, boom, right there. So now we're done. All right, so now that we've gone ahead and done that, we now are saying we're going to predict who we think will win, what the score will be, and the over-under status. So if we come back into our back test, I have gone ahead and created some columns over here for the away, the home, which are going to be their scores, who the winner is based upon the model doing the p-score, and then the over-unders, which means the last thing we need to do is evaluate who will win, right? So now we need to say predicted chance to win, and we will say if away chance is greater than home chance, then game winner equals away team, else game winner equals home team, and if. Right? Once again, another on-the-fly variable, that's all right. So now it's going to decide based upon their probability of winning, it's going to say you should probably bet this person. Now, in this version of backtesting, I am not including the odds. A more complicated version would include the odds, right? Where then it would collect your odds and say, okay, based upon what this model's showing, we suggest that you bet on X, and you would need to store in the spread, you would need the over-under, you'd need the money line odds, you'd need all that stuff. I didn't have enough time to grab the historical information, but again, you would just put it into this kind of a format where it's a logical thing, and then it would put in these values into the dashboard, look to the book information, take your percentages where you have the best odds and edge with EV, and then go ahead and pull that information into your sheet. So I can walk through that later on another video, but right now we're just going to see how well is this model at predicting winners and losers. It ignores odds completely right now, so keep that in mind. Now that we have this information, we're going to want to go ahead and start storing it into our workbook, right? So let's go ahead and scroll this up. All right, so we need to say in here, store data results, right? So we're going to say backtest.range h and x.value2, because now again we're trying to continue to move down that column, equals, and then we will say, what was our variable up here? Away score. Backtest.range I and x.value2 equals home score. Then we need backtest.range j and x.value2 u2 equals, forgot the e again, sorry for my typing right now, winner, so game winner. And then we need the over unders, so then we'd say backtest.range L and x.value2 equals OU selection, right? And then we'll say backtest.range M and x.value2 equals OU selection 2. There we go. So sorry about that. Forgot some of the variable names. Again, that's why you don't want to always do it that way. So I'm deleting some of the spacing. That's why you see the code moving around. All right. So before you ever go into a big loop, what I always like to do is just test it real quick and say, did it work? So we'll put a little tick here so that we remember how many records we're going to check through. And I'm just going to put a 2. So it'll go 2 to 2. So it's just going to do the first record. You go up here and hit the play button and then see what happens. Play, it's done, we can evaluate. All right, so it went ahead and made its prediction and put it in there. So we're gonna go ahead and come over here and update this back to 306, and we'll see how long this takes. So when you're running these, again, this does not account for odds in any way. So you want to be sure to include that in your modeling if you want to actually see then will it decide for me what the best ones are. Because even though it may say this team's not likely to win, but the odds are actually better if you bet on a team that's at a 49% chance to win and they win, you're going to actually go up in units. So that's a little bit more complicated. This is merely saying, can I select the team that is actually going to win? And again, you don't always want to select the team that has the highest probability of winning. You want to select the team that gives you the best expected value. Instead of always running it through the VBA Visual Basic application module here, you can actually just add a button through the developer tab. You can add a button and assign this macro of predict score to that button. That way you don't always have to keep this window open. Right now we're just running it this way because the window's open, it was a simple click. Often I'll put buttons on my sheets that I'm running through Microsoft Excel. Okay, so we are done. Now let's go ahead and check and make sure the data is there. All right, so it looks like all that data got in there. So we're looking pretty good right now. All right, so it looks like it's all in there. So next, we need to then evaluate whether or not we won, right? So our predictions are here, and we'll go ahead and move this over here like that, right? So all right here are our predictions, and this was the actual outcome of the game. So now we need to actually see, is this going to work, right? We need to see, did this prediction actually win? So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and create a new routine, right? So we'll come down here, sub, evaluate results. Oops, hit the space, didn't mean to do that. All right, now we have a new subroutine. So I'm going to create a bunch of padding in here so that this moves up on the screen for us. All right, as always, application.screen updating equals false. Get rid of those. Application.screen updating equals
True, so we'll turn it back on. All right, now we need to go ahead and evaluate these. So let's take a look at what we would need to do. So we can go ahead and say dim backtest as worksheet, set backtest as, set backtest equal to worksheets backtest. Great. And just fix this variable because that's going to drive me nuts. Thank you. So now we want to compare the data. What we're going to need to do is first see who actually won the game in real life, and then compare that to what we predicted. So first we need to see who wins. So we'll say O winner for original winner equals blank. All right, so I'm just going to say equals blank because that's what variable I want to use. Now I'll say for X equals 22306 because we're going to loop through every single game that we predicted. Move way down here, just put next. All right, so O winner. So now we're going to say if backtest dot range D, which is the home score, and X, right? So we're looping is greater than backtest dot range E and X dot value 2, then, so we're saying if the home score is bigger than the away score, then O winner equals backtest dot range C and X dot value 2, else O winner equals backtest dot range F and X dot value 2, and if. Now, one thing I do want to warn also with the soccer one, I'm not dealing with ties in this model. You can build it so it's a far more accurate dealing with ties, but ties just don't seem to happen all that much. So that's why I'm just not putting it in this model. Often if my numbers say it's very close to being possibly a tie, I just stay away from it. I don't want to deal with it. There's a lot of weird things that can happen with trying to get to a tie. There's a lot of weird things that happens in soccer with extra time and stuff like that. So if you want to account for it, go for it. I personally don't, because if it looks like that game might tie, I just don't even want to have a piece of it. I just step away. So then now that we know who the winner is, right, we need to also find out what was the total score, right, because then we have the over-under. So what we are going to say is total OU equals 2.5. So in the dashboard, we had it set up so that the comparative value that it was looking for total score was going to be 2.5. So we can already see we said over 2.5. That didn't happen here. And let's just double check, right? So I can show you where we're pulling this from right here on the dashboard. So 2.5. So now that we have that, we need to say, all right, let's compare the actual total score. We go back to backtest. Sorry for all the jumping around. All right, so now we will say actual score equals backtest dot range D and X dot value 2 plus backtest dot range E and X dot value 2. So now we're going to have the home and the away. So now we've got the total score. All right, and then we need to do our if statement. If actual score is greater than total OU, then outcome, OU outcome equals over, else OU outcome equals under. If. So some of you might be wondering, why did I bother putting total OU equal to 2.5 as a variable rather than just writing 2.5 in here? The reason being is that if you want to advance the model again and change the over-unders based upon the book lines that you see, you can always pass that into the variable rather than hard coding. That way it makes it a little bit simpler and you can actually pass in more clean data, right? But again, this is an example that we're walking through right now. So we now have our original winner. We have our over-under, right? So then what we will do is, because we're going to do a money line, which was based upon our winner, and then we have our over-unders. So now we know the actual outcome. So we now need to loop through the logic here. So if O winner equals backtest.range j and x value 2 for our loop, then backtest test.range range s and x dot value 2 equals when, else backtest dot range s and x dot value 2 equals loss, right? And if we have the two over and unders, so now we need to go ahead and get those and see what the outcomes would have been for them. So I'm going to say if OU outcome equals backtest dot range L and x dot value 2, then backtest dot range t and x dot value 2 equals when, else backtest dot range t and value 2 equals loss. And if, now we did that for the t, so now we just need to evaluate it for the next one, right? So we'll just copy and paste that one on down here. Outcome backtest L, well, we're actually going to look at M, what our prediction was for the other one. And if it won, it or lost, we'll put it in the U column, U. So now what you can do is say, see if moneyline prediction 1, see if over/under model 1, 1, and then we can do our last one of see if O/U model 2, 1. Delete a lot of that. All right, and we're going to just pull this next button back up, and we are going to go ahead and run a test on this, right? So again, never do it in the full set because you could make the whole system go slow. So we'll just evaluate this first one, and here we go. Boom. So we did predict the right winner, but we got the losses wrong. Now this is some of the power of backtesting. So let's go ahead and move this out to say 100. We're going to do 100 trials. Let's see here. All right, so it's going to run for a little bit. It's going to run through all of this logic and then spit out 100 results. So I want to first see this. So we're going to do roughly 1/3 of our games that we're going to compare. Now that that's done, what I can do is take this, paste it here, right? Or we can actually just use it here. Say equal count if S to S has win, right? So that's how many wins we got. And we did it for 99 records, right? 56% accuracy for the money line out of 100 trials. We have over-unders are 51, right? So that doesn't look great. We're not doing too well with the over-unders. So let's go ahead and look at the full data set. So I'm just going to go ahead and rerun this again, and it'll take one moment to calculate all these out. All right, that has finished. So now let's go ahead and take a look. So we didn't update this yet to say how many actual trials there were. So there's 305, right? We're still divided by 99, so it's going to throw that off. 305, 305, 305. All right, so let's go ahead and slide this on over a little bit. Boop, 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 boop. So here, after that, right, we now see that our money line prediction wasn't as good, and the over-under moved around a little bit on its predictive abilities. So again, this is why you want to backtest. You want to test a lot of data, several seasons worth of data, try, year over year, and see how the model's performing. A lot of times, you can look at this and go, okay, something's wrong with my model, or perhaps, I need to test more data, or I need to change things out.
That is it on backtesting. Not overly complicated, relatively simplistic to understand, but very critical in any time you're building a new sports betting model. You always want to validate your model before you actually lay your bet. That way you're not losing money on a bet that you're not positive is going to work very well because you never tested your data model and now you're just assuming it's going to work. If you do have any questions, comments, or concerns around the stuff that I'm talking about, or you need some guidance on some things, or you just want to talk about sports betting in general, feel free to drop a comment. You can also reach me on Twitter and Instagram. That is where I post most of my picks when I am setting up my picks. Until next time, happy wagering.